May 24, 1941, North Atlantic, west of Iceland. The sea was steel gray and endless. Waves rolled under a bruised sky as the German battleship Bismarck plowed through them at nearly 30 knots. Spray whipped across her deck, glinting off her 15-inch gun barrels. 8 monsters of naval engineering, capable of shattering any ship afloat. Below deck in the mess hall, laughter echoed. "The Royal Navy runs like frightened dogs," a machinist shouted, raising his mug. His comrades cheered. They had reason to. Just hours earlier, Bismarck had obliterated Britain's greatest warship, HMS Hood. At 0600 hours, during the Battle of the Denmark Strait, Bismarck's gunners had found their mark. A shell from Anton turret struck Hood's aft magazine. In an instant, a pillar of fire tore through the ship, followed by a thunderclap that shattered the morning calm. Within minutes, the pride of the Royal Navy was gone, sunk with nearly all 400 men aboard. "One lucky shot," boasted Oberleutnant Joseph Stotz, his voice thick with triumph. "England's invincible Hood, now fish food." Captain Ernst Lindemann, standing on the bridge beside Admiral Gunther Lütjens, didn't smile. He stared out across the cold Atlantic, his jaw tight. "She was a fine ship," he said quietly. "We'll not celebrate men's deaths." Lütjens, the cautious strategist, gave no reply. His orders were simple: break into the Atlantic, raid merchant convoys, and starve Britain's war machine. But now, every British vessel from Scapa Flow to Gibraltar would be hunting them. Below, in the engine rooms, the mood was different. Grease-streaked sailors worked tirelessly among the roaring turbines. "We'll never make it to France," one muttered. "They'll come for us now." Up on the bridge, Lindemann adjusted his binoculars and scanned the horizon. "Signal the Prince Eugen to take the lead," he ordered. "We'll separate, draw their fire if we must." Bismarck surged forward, her engines churning the gray sea. The crew was confident, arrogant even. They had destroyed Hood and damaged Prince of Wales. To them, Bismarck was untouchable. But in London, beneath the War Office lights, Winston Churchill gave a simple command that would seal their fate: sink the Bismarck. In the early hours of May 25th, the Bismarck was a ghost in the Atlantic fog. The Royal Navy's massive search grid, hundreds of miles wide, had lost her. The last radio intercepts placed her heading southeast toward the French coast. But now, radar silence. Nothing. Aboard HMS King George V, Admiral John Tovey paced the bridge, jaw set, eyes rimmed red from lack of sleep. The sea outside was black, the horizon empty. "She must be heading for Brest," he muttered. "She'll have Luftwaffe cover once she's there." "Then we have to find her before that," said Captain Henry Walker, tightening his coat against the chill. Every ship with range or radar was now sweeping the ocean. The heavy cruisers Norfolk, Suffolk, Sheffield, and the carrier Ark Royal. Even the old battleships Rodney and Ramillies were converging, pushing their tired engines beyond endurance. In Bismarck's radio room, operators strained over their receivers. "Admiral, British transmissions are growing faint." "They've lost us," one reported. Lütjens allowed himself a rare smile. "Good. Maintain course for Saint-Nazaire. Once we reach air cover, they'll never touch us." But fate, like the sea, has its own currents. Aboard the British cruiser Suffolk, a faint radar echo flickered at the edge of the screen. Lieutenant Roper leaned closer. "Bearing 240 degrees. Large contact, sir." "Confirm that," ordered the captain. The echo returned. Faint, fleeting, but real. Word spread through the fleet like electricity. The Bismarck had been found. By dawn, Swordfish torpedo bombers from Ark Royal were being armed and fueled. On the flight deck, the smell of oil and sea salt mixed with the shriek of wind. The biplanes looked ancient. Canvas wings, open cockpits, exposed engines. Some pilots joked bitterly they were flying relics from another war. Yet these relics were about to strike one of the most powerful warships ever built. Lieutenant Commander John Moffett, standing beside his Swordfish, adjusted his goggles and said quietly, "She's wounded pride, that ship. Let's finish it." The wind howled as the deck crew signaled for takeoff. One by one, the Swordfish rolled down the pitching carrier, their engines screaming as they leapt into the gray sky. Below, on Bismarck's bridge, the lookout shouted, "Aircraft bearing south." The alarm sirens wailed through the ship. Anti-aircraft crews scrambled to their posts, ramming shells into the 37mm and 105mm guns. The gunners were confident. They had already beaten back aircraft near Norway weeks before. Tracer fire streaked the sky as the Swordfish dove through clouds, wings rattling in the slipstream. Torpedoes dropped into the sea, their wakes curling white behind them. The first attack wave missed. Every torpedo struck empty water or glanced off Bismarck's armor belt. The British pilots returned shaken but alive. On the carrier, the mood was tense. "We'll go again," said Moffett. "We'll keep going until we hit her." The sea was turning rough, wind rising to gale force. Waves towered like walls. It was as if the Atlantic itself was trying to swallow both hunter and hunted. In Bismarck's engine room, a mechanic shouted over the roar of turbines. "She's still fast, 30 knots. We'll be in range of France soon." But the British fleet was closing in. The gap was shrinking. That night, under a black sky, Ark Royal prepared her second strike. The Swordfish crews, soaked and shivering, climbed back into their cockpits. "One torpedo," Moffett told his gunner. "That's all it'll take." As the carrier turned into the wind, flares lit the deck like lightning. Engines roared. The biplanes lifted off once more, disappearing into the storm. They didn't know it yet. But within the hour, one of them would change naval history. The storm had swallowed the horizon. Black waves heaved and broke against Bismarck's steel hull as she tore through the night at flank speed. The ship groaned under the pressure of the Atlantic. Its bulk a fortress of German engineering, unstoppable, or so her crew believed. On Ark Royal, in the frigid darkness, Lieutenant Commander John Moffett's Swordfish biplane fought to stay level. The rain lashed his goggles. Visibility was near zero. "Can't see a thing," his gunner shouted over the radio hum. "Just keep your eyes open," Moffett replied, gripping the control stick tighter. "She's out here somewhere." Below, on Bismarck's bridge, Captain Lindemann leaned over the plotting table. "Course steady. Engines maintaining speed. We'll reach Luftwaffe range in less than 12 hours. Admiral Lütjens nodded. "Inform Berlin we will arrive at Saint-Nazaire by morning." "Jawohl, Herr Admiral." The crew's spirits were rising again. The earlier air attack had failed. No damage, no losses. They sang and joked in the mess, unaware of what hunted them above the clouds. At 2100 hours, radar operators aboard Sheffield, one of Ark Royal's escorts, spotted a faint contact. They signaled the carrier. "Enemy bearing 240 degrees, 30 miles. But in the confusion of radiostatic and gale winds, the first wave of Swordfish mistakenly attacked Sheffield itself. Torpedoes streaked toward the British cruiser, her crew shouting, "Friendly aircraft," before emergency flares signaled them off. Every torpedo missed, thank God. A near disaster. Back aboard Ark Royal, Commander Terry Goddard slammed his fist on the chart table. "We'll try again. Correct bearings, new course. And someone make sure they know which bloody ship is which this time." By 2140 hours, a second wave of 15 Swordfish lifted from the carrier deck. The night was darker now, the sea black glass under flashes of lightning. They flew low, just 50 feet above the waves, to evade radar. Moffett's voice crackled over the radio. "Contact. Large wake ahead." "That's her." Moments later, the Bismarck loomed out of the storm like a mountain of steel, her searchlights slicing through rain. Anti-aircraft guns erupted in orange fire. The Swordfish dove in. Tracers whipped past their wings. Explosions rocked the sea. One plane caught fire, plunging into the waves. Another's torpedo detonated prematurely, the shockwave buffeting Moffat's aircraft. He lined up for his run. "Hold her steady," he shouted. The ship filled his viewfinder, massive, armored, defiant. "Now!" The torpedo splashed into the sea and sped toward Bismarck's stern. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, impact. A thunderous crack tore through the battleship's hull. The deck lurched violently. Below, in the steering compartment, men were thrown from their stations as seawater gushed through ruptured seams. "Rudder jammed," an officer yelled. "She's turning. Hard to port." Lindemann barked into the comms. "Reverse engines. Try to counter the turn." But it was useless. The hit had struck Bismarck's weakest point, her rudder and steering gear. Now she was trapped in a slow, helpless circle. On the bridge, silence fell. Lucian stared ahead, face pale beneath his cap. "Can we repair it?" "Impossible at sea, Admiral," came the grim reply. "We'd need a dry dock." Lucian's exhaled. "Then we'll fight." In London, the Admiralty received the coded report. Bismarck crippled, rudder destroyed. Admiral Tovey's eyes widened. "Then this is it," he said softly. "She's finished." The order went out across the Atlantic. "All forces converge. Engage and destroy." That night, the Bismarck drifted in the storm, engines straining, steering useless. The mighty ship that had once ruled the waves now limped in circles, waiting for the dawn and for vengeance. May 27th, 1941. The last battle of the Bismarck. Dawn crept across the Atlantic as a pale bruise on the horizon. Wind tore at the gray waves, still thick with rain and spindrift. The Bismarck wallowed helplessly, her great hull tilting with each swell. The rudder remained jammed hard to port, locking her in a slow, pathetic arc. Inside, the ship groaned like a wounded animal. Men scrambled through flooded compartments, dragging hoses, trying in vain to pump out seawater. The smell of oil and metal hung heavy. "We can still fight," muttered Obermatt Franz Eich, his hands trembling as he loaded shells into an anti-aircraft gun. "We'll show them German steel doesn't break." Captain Lindemann stood on the bridge, coat soaked, face drawn but resolute. "We'll not surrender," he said. "We fight to the last shell." Admiral Lutyens gave a faint nod. His eyes, tired but unflinching, swept the stormy horizon. "Signal to Berlin," he ordered. "Ship unable to maneuver. We will fight to the last man. Long live the Führer." It was 0830 hours when the first British ships appeared through the mist. HMS King George V and HMS Rodney, their guns trained and ready. Far off, cruisers Norfolk and Dorsetshire moved in to close the trap. On King George V's bridge, Admiral Tovey lowered his binoculars. "There she is. Let's finish this." The order went out. Open fire. The morning exploded in thunder. The British battleships unleashed their full broadsides, 15-inch and 16-inch shells screaming across the gray sea, slamming into Bismarck's superstructure. The first salvo struck home. One shell smashed through the forward turrets, igniting ammunition. Another tore through the bridge, killing men instantly. Flames engulfed the upper decks, painting the storm clouds orange. Bismarck fired back, her 4 turrets blazing defiantly, but her aim was broken by the wild roll of the ship. Most shells fell short or wide, geysers erupting uselessly around the British ships. "Keep firing!" Lindemann roared. His voice was nearly drowned by the roar of guns and the scream of metal. Each minute brought another barrage. The British fire was relentless, methodical, punishing. Rodney's guns struck again and again, tearing Bismarck's hull open like paper. In the engine rooms, men were dying by the dozens. Steam scalding flesh, machinery collapsing around them. "The power's gone," a mechanic screamed. We've lost main propulsion. Up on deck, the anti-aircraft crews fought blindly, shooting into the smoke as splinters of steel and shrapnel rained down. One young sailor, his face streaked with blood, kept chanting, "Für Deutschland! Für Deutschland!" until a blast silenced him. By Euro 9:30 hours, Bismarck was a burning hulk. Her guns had fallen silent, smashed or jammed. Her decks were a chaos of flame, twisted steel, and fallen men. Admiral Tovey watched from the bridge of King George V, expression grim. "Cease fire," he ordered finally. "No sense in slaughtering what's left." But the Bismarck still floated, barely. Captain Benjamin Martin of HMS Dorsetshire received the next order. Finish her with torpedoes. At 10:20 hours, Dorsetshire closed in. 2 torpedoes streaked through the water and struck amidships. The explosions tore through the crippled hull. Moments later, another hit forward. Water rushed in. Deep inside, damage control crews gave up pumping and began opening scuttling valves. Captain Lindemann, battered and bleeding, stood on the bridge one last time. "Men of the Bismarck," he shouted over the roar of fire and sea, "you have fought well. You have done your duty for Germany. May God protect you." Then, with a shuddering groan, the great ship began to roll. At 10:40 hours, Bismarck capsized and slipped beneath the waves. Stern first, her bow rising briefly, defiantly, before vanishing into the deep. Out of a crew of over 2,000, only 114 would be pulled from the freezing sea. The Royal Navy watched her go in silence. King George V turned away, guns still smoking, decks slick with rain. In London, when the message came, Bismarck sunk. Churchill exhaled slowly. "Thank God," he murmured. "Now perhaps the Atlantic is ours again." But for the men who fought her, the victory was cold. As the wind died and the sea smoothed once more, the only sound left was the hiss of steam and the whisper of waves over the place where Germany's mightiest warship had gone to her grave. In the cold Atlantic, thousands went down with the Bismarck, a monument to pride and a reminder of the limits of power. If you're drawn to true stories from the war, tales of courage, tragedy, and fate, then subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Every week, we bring the past back to life. The battles, the heroes, and the moments that changed history forever.